All right, let's dive in. Today we're exploring how to achieve a life by design instead of just letting things happen.
Sounds ambitious.
It is, but luckily we have a roadmap. We're going to be using the ideas of Tom Ferry, a successful entrepreneur and life strategist.
Oh, I've heard of him. So are we, like, giving a book report here?
Kind of. Think of it as a shortcut through his book, pulling out the most important points so we can help you understand this whole living by design thing and what might be holding us back from actually, doing it.
Love it. Let's do it.
Okay, so Ferry contrasts living by default with living by design. Like, are we just on autopilot, accepting whatever life throws at us?
Right. Or are we making conscious choices and actually, like, taking control?
Exactly. He uses this story of Mary, a top real estate agent. Super successful professionally, but totally unhappy in her personal life.
Oof, I know a few people like that. Always working, never around.
Right. She was neglecting her family, her own well-being, all for the sake of, like, climbing that ladder.
Makes you think, you know, what are we prioritizing in our own lives? Where's the balance?
Definitely. And I think Mary's story shows what happens when we're stuck in that living by default mode. We feel trapped. We blame everyone else.
And we avoid those uncomfortable truths about our own lives.
Yeah, we don't want to face the music, which, ironically, is exactly what Ferry had to do. His own journey to living by design starts with him hitting rock bottom as a teenager.
Wait, really? What happened?
Drugs, dropping out of school, the whole 9 yards.
Right.
But it was a turning point.
You know, sometimes it takes hitting that low point to realize you need to make a change.
It's like a wake-up call, right? And for Ferry, his wake-up call was his dad, a super successful entrepreneur who Ferry decided to kind of follow in the footsteps of.
Okay, so he goes from rock bottom to, like, success. Just like that.
Well, he got really into the self-help world. Guys like Zig Ziglar, Tony Robbins. He was reading everything, absorbing it all, and it led him to create his own company, achieve a lot of outward success.
So he had it all figured out, right? The success, the business.
You'd think so. But even with all that, he realized something was missing. He'd become a workaholic, just like his father, and his family life was falling apart. Sound familiar?
Ouch, yeah. That classic trap. We achieve all this success, but we're miserable.
Exactly. So Ferry starts working with a mentor who introduces him to these 5 fundamental questions for assessing life purpose and values.
5 questions. That's it.
That sounds almost too simple, but they're powerful. And they were originally posed by, get this, Mike Vance.
Oh, wow, the Mike Vance. What are the questions?
Okay, so first, why are you here and what's your purpose? Heavy stuff right out of the gate.
Makes sense. Get to the heart of it. What's next?
Next, how do you want to come across to others? Then, what are your values?
I like that, values. That's key. Okay, what else?
Okay, then we have, what are your God-given talents? And last but not least, 5 years from now, how will the world experience you? Who would you be if you were already there?
Whoa, that last one is deep. Really makes you think about the kind of impact you want to have.
It's like a vision board, but for your whole life. And these questions really hit very hard. He realized he was living on someone else's terms, not his own values and aspirations.
What did he do?
Well, he made a big decision. He left the family business and started his own company. And this whole idea of waking up, it becomes a major theme for him.
Waking up, you mean like literally?
Well, kind of. He argues that a lot of us are living in this life coma where routine and denial are masking how unhappy we really are.
Like we're sleepwalking through life.
Exactly. And he uses this story of a client, Donald, to illustrate the point.
Ooh, story time. I love his client stories.
So Donald was obsessed with his competitor, criticizing everything they did, but he wasn't adapting his own business model.
Classic coma move. He's stuck in the past, not willing to change.
Right, clinging to the old ways, even though they're not working anymore. And that's where resistance comes in.
Ah, yes, resistance to change. We all struggle with that, don't we?
Big time. And Ferry says there are 4 key addictions that feed this resistance and keep us from really living by design.
Ooh, addictions. Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about these addictions.
Well, before we get into that, I think it's worth pausing here. We've covered a lot: default versus design, aligning with our values, this life coma. What are you thinking so far?
It's a lot to take in. I'm definitely thinking about those 5 questions and where I might be living by default in my own life. It's definitely making me think.
Me too. And I think it's going to get even more interesting as we explore these 4 addictions that Ferry says are keeping us stuck.
Can't wait. Let's dive in.
Okay, so let's talk about these 4 addictions that Ferry says are holding us back from living by design. What makes them so tricky?
Well, they often look like, totally normal behavior. It's not always obvious that they're actually harmful addictions.
That makes them even harder to break
Right.
because we don't even realize we're in their grip.
Exactly. And that's why Ferry spends so much time in his book breaking them down for us. He wants us to see them clearly so we can, start to free ourselves.
Okay, so let's start with the first one, the addiction to the opinions of others. Man, I think everyone struggles with this to some degree. It's like we're constantly seeking validation from the outside world.
It's everywhere, especially now with social media. It's all about likes and followers and who's got the best, whatever.
Right, and it's easy to get caught up in that game of comparison and competition. Like we're not good enough unless someone else tells us we are.
Ferry tells the story about his mentor, Bill Mitchell. Mitchell believed that if he could teach his granddaughter one thing, it would be to completely stop caring about what other people think.
Wow, that's a pretty radical idea.
Yeah,
But I get it. It's about finding that inner confidence, right? Where you don't need external validation to feel good about yourself.
exactly. He said true freedom is putting your opinion of yourself above everyone else's.
Easier said than done, though. But I guess it starts with awareness, right? Recognizing when we're making decisions based on what other people will think instead of what we actually want.
He talks about this client, John, who was so obsessed with status symbols, fancy cars, expensive watches, all that stuff. He thought that was what success looked like.
So he was trying to project this image of success instead of actually building a successful business.
Exactly. And it was all for show. He was more concerned with what other people thought than with the actual work of, running a business.
Wow, that's a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
And then he contrasts that with another client, Carol, who was struggling to launch her real estate career because of her parents' disapproval.
Oh, that's tough. When it's your own family holding you back.
Right. They thought real estate was too risky. They wanted her to stick with her accounting job, something safe and stable.
But she knew she was capable of more, right?
Yeah, but she was letting their doubts get to her. It was holding her back.
So, two different examples, but both rooted in this need for external validation, whether it's seeking approval or avoiding disapproval.
How do we break free from that? It seems so ingrained,
Mhm.
Like we're wired to care what other people think.
It's definitely a challenge. Ferry emphasizes really focusing on getting to know yourself. Journaling, meditating, spending time in nature, things that help you connect with your inner voice and your values.
So it's about strengthening that internal compass,
Right.
right? So we're not so reliant on those external cues.
Exactly. And it's also about surrounding yourself with people who support you, who encourage you to be yourself, even if it's not what everyone else expects.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's move on to the second addiction. Addiction to drama. I know a few drama queens.
Me too. And Ferry suggests that for some people, it's like a way of life. They thrive on chaos.
It's like they need that adrenaline rush of a crisis to feel alive.
Yeah, and they might even create drama where it doesn't exist, Dwell on negativity, blow things out of proportion.
Oh, I know the type. And it can be exhausting to be around, right?
Totally. And Ferry says it's often a way to avoid dealing with, deeper emotional stuff that they don't want to face.
It's easier to create a distraction than to actually do the work.
He tells this story about a client who was convinced he was about to get fired. There was no evidence of this, but he was totally catastrophized.
Oh, we've all been there. Letting our imaginations run wild, creating these worst-case scenarios in our heads.
And it can really paralyze us, prevent us from actually taking action.
He also talks about this incident on a family vacation to Hawaii, where his wife loses her purse and has a complete meltdown.
Oh no, losing your purse on vacation, that's the worst. But yeah, I can see how someone with a drama addiction would turn that into a major catastrophe.
Exactly. And Ferry's point is that it's not about the event itself, it's about our reaction to it. Someone addicted to drama will always find a way to, stir things up.
So how do we break this addiction to drama? It seems like it would require a real shift in perspective.
Well, Ferry talks about this idea of seeing life as a series of scenes, like in a movie. Each scene eventually ends, even the dramatic ones.
Oh, I like that. It helps put things into perspective. Even the most intense scenes are temporary.
Right. And it reminds us that we have the power to choose how we respond to each scene. We don't have to get swept up in the drama.
He also talks about the importance of recognizing our own role in creating the drama. Are we exaggerating things? Are we focusing on the negative? Are we feeding the drama by engaging with it?
So again, it comes back to self-awareness and making conscious choices.
Exactly. And using tools like mindfulness and meditation to help us regulate our emotions.
Oh, okay, makes sense. Let's move on to the third addiction. Addiction to the past. This one hits home for me We all have baggage, right? Hurts, regrets, mistakes.
It's part of being human. But Ferry argues that dwelling on the past, replaying old arguments, obsessing over things we can't change, it just keeps us stuck.
Yeah, it's like we're trapped in this loop, replaying the same old tapes over and over again.
He talks about this client, Mike, who was totally crippled by regret over a failed business venture. He couldn't let go of the loss. It was preventing him from moving forward.
Oh, I've been there. It's so easy to get caught up in that what-if thinking.
And Ferry suggests this really powerful technique. Write letters to people from the past.
Wait, like actually write them out?
Yeah, as a way to release those emotions, not to send them, but just to express those feelings and finally let go.
It sounds cathartic. A way to process those emotions that we've been holding on to for so long.
He also encourages forgiveness of others and ourselves. We all make mistakes, but dwelling on them only hurts us in the end.
It's about learning from the past, but not letting it define us.
Exactly. It's time to move on and create a future that's not weighed down by those past burdens.
Okay, on to the final addiction, the one that probably keeps us all up at night. Addiction to worry. That constant loop of what-ifs and worst-case scenarios.
Oh yeah, the worry monster. Ferry has this great analogy for it. He calls it the drunk monkey in the kitchen.
Huh? I love that. It perfectly captures that feeling of your mind racing with anxieties, like a monkey just going crazy in your head.
Right. And he uses the example of this client, Eric, who had a heart attack from all the stress and worry he was carrying.
Wow, that's a serious wake-up call. It shows how much worry can affect our physical health, not just our mental well-being.
And Ferry's advice is so simple, but so profound. Don't feed the monkey.
Meaning, don't give in to those negative thoughts and anxieties.
Exactly. Don't fuel the worry with those what-if scenarios. Acknowledge the worry, but don't give it power.
So instead of being a victim of worry, we need to become active problem solvers.
Exactly. He recommends writing down your worries and then really thinking about how likely they are to happen.
Sometimes just putting them down on paper can help us see them more clearly, right? And realize that maybe we're blowing things out of proportion.
He also stresses the importance of being underplanned instead of overwhelmed. Often we feel overwhelmed because we haven't taken the time to create a plan.
So it's about breaking things down into manageable steps instead of letting everything pile up and feel chaotic.
And having that plan can really help to calm that worry monster.
Okay, so we've talked about these 4 addictions, but Ferry doesn't just leave us there, right? He offers a way out, a path to living by design.
Exactly. But before we jump into that, I think it's important to take a moment and, really reflect on these 4 addictions. How are they showing up in your own life?
Yeah, think about a recent situation where you felt that pull, whether it was worrying about what others thought, getting caught up in drama, dwelling on the past, or letting those anxieties run wild.
Recognizing those patterns is the first step to breaking free. So take some time to reflect before we move on to the solutions.
Okay, so we've identified these addictions that, keep us stuck in that default mode. But how do we actually shift gears? How do we start living by design?
Well, first of all, it's not about, reaching some perfect state of being. It's more about making those daily choices, big or small.
So it's about progress, not perfection.
Exactly. And Ferry gives us this great tool to get started, the core values assessment. He says a lot of us are living out of alignment with our true values.
Okay, so how does this assessment work?
It's basically a bunch of questions that make you think about, what really matters to you. He gives you a list of values, things like achievement, adventure, family, freedom, security, all those good things.
Right. And then
You rank them, figure out which ones resonate most strongly with you, pick your top 5.
So it's about identifying what actually drives you, what motivates you, your core values.
Yep. Once you know your core values, you can start to look at different areas of your life, your career, relationships, finances, health, you name it.
And see if they're actually in alignment with those values.
Right. If not, what changes can you make to get things back on track, to live a life that feels more authentic?
It's like a course correction for your life. I love it.
It's powerful stuff. And Ferry says it's not a one-time thing. It's an ongoing process, You got to check in with yourself regularly, make adjustments as you grow and change.
And speaking of checking in, this is where those 5 fundamental questions from Mike Vance come in. Why are you here? What's your purpose? All that good stuff.
Those questions are gold. They really make you dig deep and get clear on what you want out of life.
Totally agree. So we've figured out our core values. We've asked ourselves the tough questions. Now what? How do we actually start making changes?
That's where action comes in. Ferry is all about taking action, not just thinking about it.
Okay, so let's talk about those 4 addictions again. Give us some practical tips for overcoming them, starting with the addiction to the opinions of others.
For that one, it's all about learning to value your own opinion above anyone else's. Set boundaries. Learn to say no. Find your tribe.
Your tribe.
The people who support you, who encourage you to be yourself, the ones who get you.
So you can kind of create that safe space where you don't feel judged or pressured to conform.
Exactly. Now, for the addiction to drama, it's about learning to recognize when you're catastrophizing, when you're creating chaos.
So take a step back, breathe, try to respond more calmly and rationally.
And remember that analogy of life as a movie. Each scene ends eventually.
Right. Don't get so caught up in the drama of the moment that you forget about the bigger picture.
Okay, now for the tough one. The addiction to the past. It's about letting go. Forgiveness, both of others and ourselves.
That can be so hard, though.
I know Ferry uses this analogy of holding onto a bunch of balloons. Each balloon represents a past hurt or regret, and we're holding on so tight that we can't move forward.
Wow. Yeah, I can see that. We're weighed down by all that baggage.
So visualize letting go of those balloons, release those burdens, and remember those letters we talked about. Writing those letters can be a powerful way to process those emotions and create closure.
It's about creating space for something new, something better.
Right. Okay, lastly, let's tackle that drunk monkey in the kitchen, that addiction to worry.
Don't feed the monkey.
Exactly. Don't give those worries power. Remember, write them down. Assess how likely they are to happen. Often you'll realize that your anxieties are based on, irrational fears.
And if you are feeling overwhelmed, try breaking those tasks down into smaller steps. Create a plan.
Planning can be such a powerful antidote to worry. And remember, you don't have to do this alone. Find your tribe. Build a support system.
Surround yourself with people who will encourage you and hold you accountable.
And sometimes that means letting go of those energy vampires, the people who drain you and bring you down.
Even if it's tough to do, sometimes it's necessary for our own well-being.
It's about prioritizing your growth and surrounding yourself with people who lift you up.
So living by design is not just about one area of our life, it's about creating balance in all areas.
Exactly. It's about your relationships, your health, your work, your passions, everything.
It's about creating a life that feels aligned, purposeful, and fulfilling.
And remember, it's a journey, not a destination. It's about constantly growing, learning, and becoming the best version of yourself.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into living by design, what's the one thing you hope our listener will take away from this?
I want them to remember that they have the power to design the life they want. They don't have to settle. They can create something truly extraordinary.
It starts with that choice, right? To shift from default to design.
And remember Ferry's challenge. If you could leave one message for future generations about how to live a fulfilling life, what would it be?
It's a powerful question. What legacy do we want to leave behind? What impact do we want to make on the world?
It's about thinking bigger than ourselves, about creating a ripple effect of positive change.
So to our listener, as you continue on your journey of living by design, remember, you have the power to shape not only your own life, but the world around you.
Choose wisely, act with intention, and never stop learning and growing. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring.
And remember, starve those drunk monkeys and keep designing a life you love.